Okay, that's going to be one of the easiest videos I've got to do, and it's how to use a projector. So first, turn off the light, and this is the reason I don't use a projector all the time, because sometimes it's in broad daylight outside, and obviously it's too bright and I can't see what I'm doing. So then I'll use a doodle grid or something. But as much as I can, I always try to use a projector. And even though it's kind of obvious how to use a projector, I'm just going to give you a couple of tips. So what I'm doing now is I'm sheltering the light with my hand just to see a little bit more, because there's there's some light overhead, and you can't always control the lighting, so you can shelter the light either with your hand or with a piece of cardboard or something rigid is easier, and it allows you to see a bit better. Another thing as well, before I forget, if you're tracing on, say, blue or brown or pink or beige or whatever, and it's not white and you're struggling to see what you're doing, especially something darker like a dark blue or whatever, you can have a piece of A4, like a white piece of A4, and then you say I'm tracing the eye there, I could have a piece of A4 on top of it, say if the wall was dark, say even if it's a black wall, and maybe it's hard to see what I'm doing. Then you can have a piece of there. What I'm doing is I'm overpowering the projector, but then I'm going to use a bigger light to make it a bit easier. This is a floodlight that I use for work sometimes, and this allows me to see all the pencil lines without the projector, and then I can see what I've missed. Because the last thing you want to do is miss some lines and try to have to match what you've done and position the projector exactly where it was. In most cases, it's not going to happen, and then you got discrepancies and it's annoying. So you really want to finish to trace everything. But about the dark wall, so say if you have a dark wall, you can have a piece of A4, and then you can put it in front of what you're tracing, say the nose, for example, and then so you can look at it, see where it lands, and then take it off, put it back. And by doing that, it allows you to see the line, and then you can just keep a mental note as you remove the A4 paper, and then you can trace it and so on. It would make a lot of sense when you do it. If I was to do it there, to be honest, I forgot, but even if I did, it wouldn't really make a lot of sense. It would make a lot of sense when you physically do it yourself. So again, if the wall is not white or light, use a piece of white paper or card or whatever, and then sort of position it, move it, and then you can make mental notes of the lines. And then in this case, what I'm doing, I'm tracing all the hard lines. So the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the wrinkles, but I'm not really gonna mark like see on the forehead where you've got two spots of highlights, and then the middle is a bit like medium or whatever. If I don't get it perfectly correct, it doesn't matter. So in these areas, I just don't trace them. I only trace the hard lines. Same as the hair. I ended up changing it anyway, but I'm basically tracing the main volume and stuff, and that's enough. Where the mouth is, there, it's quite important that I trace as much as possible of the hard lines, so it looks like him. But the areas of like soft colors and blends, you don't have to trace anything. If anything, it'll confuse you more than help you. So yeah, just trace the hard lines, and that will be enough for you to see what you're doing. And now when it's done, I'm just going to move back, use the floodlight again, and then cover the whole area. Sometimes I put my body in front of the projector to see what I'm doing. But sometimes when it's a bit dark, it's hard to see the lines that you've traced. So in that case, it's good to have a strong light, and then you can see exactly all the lines and see if you've missed anything, and then you can trace them before you move the projector. In this case, all is good, so I can start with the painting. Okay, so we're in the back of my workshop, and I'm just gonna use this wall to show you how to do this. So basically, I'm filming with the phone, so I'm having to use the laptop. So this is the picture I'm gonna use, and first I'm gonna do the doodle grid roughly where I think the toucan should be. So it'll be a shape like this. Okay, so the shape roughly is kind of like this. I'm not going to do the branch that it's on, it doesn't really matter, it's just for the demo. I just want to do this part, basically. So I'm just going to be generous with where I'm going to trace. That's more than enough, and then that should be easy to see. So first I'm going to do doodles, which doesn't actually matter what I'm doing, as long as there's enough contrast on this. Can't really see, so I'm going to use a different color. This is the ghetto filming part of the course. Not as polished. Okay, so first I'm going to do some numbers with a color that contrasts. Don't do something like this, because this is hard to see when you're doing when you're superimposing the two pictures. So only do lines with hard lines. It's also a lot easier when something has been painted before, because the paint doesn't go through. As you can see, the green is easy to see compared to that one. Now, however, this is the wrong color. I just like to use numbers and letters, because then I don't have to think about it. A lot of the time, like before, I'd do smiley faces and all this business, and then I run out of idea, and then I'm there thinking, so now just for speed, I just do the alphabet, and then by the time I'm done, I just do, when I run out, I do numbers again. So you can do big letters like this if, say, you're looking at this part of the bird, because only where the yellow meets the black is important, or where the black in the background is. But inside the yellow, that's just going to be one color, so it doesn't matter. But as a demo, I'm just going to do loads. The smaller the numbers, the more accurate it's going to be, but also the more time consuming. And if it's a really big wall, by the time you take, like, you do loads of grid and you take a picture, your numbers, as you can see there, they're a bit harder to read, and in your picture it's going to get confusing. So in this case, it's always best to do like a grid with big numbers and letters. So it would be like A, B, C kind of thing. And say you're doing a portrait, then you can do a smaller grid within the grid. So where the eyes are, you do a smaller grid, and the nose and the mouth. But where the cheeks are, you just leave the bigger letters. It doesn't actually matter. So I'm just going to carry on. J, K. Oh, when I get to this, I always do M, and then I don't do the N because it looks too similar. So I'll go O, maybe do a dot, and then P, can do a Q, R, S, T, and then I don't do U, V, W because it's too similar a shape, and then afterwards when I look at the phone it's just confusing. So I normally go like, say, to T, U, and then X, Y, Z. When people see this, they think I can't spell, can't write, but it doesn't matter. And then go back to the numbers. Also, I mean, this is fine because the numbers are here, the next ones are here, so I'm not gonna get confused on which one it is. But sometimes it's a bit confusing. So because I've got like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here, and then I've got to go to 1, 2, 3 again because I ran out of. It's a big picture, so I do them slightly differently. So quite tall and narrow kind of thing. So then I can see at a glance, I see these numbers are quite different. And then I can go back with the letters and stuff. And then say if this is an area with loads of detail, and what you can do is add a few dots just to fill in the gaps a bit, because the last thing you want is the corner of the eye to be where there's nothing, and then you have to guess too much. In this case, it's a very, well, I chose on purpose, a low detail picture. Once that's done, I'm going to take a picture of the wall, and then I'm going to do some screenshots on my phone. So on Snapseed, the one before last symbol is the opacity. So you can go left or right to make the picture more or less transparent. And as you can see, I'm going to do loads of different screenshots of different transparency, so I can easily see the dark and the light areas in those pictures. Okay, so now in Photoshop, I've got the 3 images, the original, one screenshot that's quite light, and one screenshot that's quite dark. As you can see, we can only see the letters really in the dark areas. In the yellow, it's invisible, and this is why you really need to do multiple screenshots. So I'm going to zoom in to this bit, the light bit to start with, and obviously normally you zoom in on your phone and then you do the work as you go, but again I'm filming with the phone, so I can't do that. Right, so basically what you want to do is you want to see the numbers here and the numbers here, and cut the lines where you think everything matches. So if we look at the 7 here and the 7 there, you see the line where its head is, or the yellow part at least, cuts between the bar of the 7 and the corner of the 7. It's probably about the middle. If we look there, it's roughly about the middle. I'm just going to do a quick line here. So the middle is about there. I'm just going to do a quick line. And then it goes to the top, the first bar of the 7, and then the first bar of the 6 as well. So we're going to do another line joining these two. And then when we look at the 5, it's not super accurate. That's why I said avoid having flared lines, because they're hard to see. But it's basically the corner of the 5 and then the top of the bar of the 4, and like the in between where the 3 and the 4 meet. So where the 3 and the 4 meet here, I'm going to put a little line. Obviously when you're doing it, you don't have to do a line and join them. You can just do as you go, but it's just to explain. We said the corner of the 5. Now I can join all of these. That's the top of the toucan's beak. There we can see between the eyes of the smiley face and the nose, that's where that line is. Basically between these two dots, that's where the line is. And it goes in the middle of this dot here. That's why dots are quite useful to add. So there's a line between there, like that. Then there's that squibbly bit, which is at the bottom. And then whatever that is, B and C. So where the B and C join, there's a line. So there. And the squibbly bit, then I can just join them. Cool. Let's zoom out a bit. Okay. Oops. Oh, I'm on Photoshop. I need to press space. There we go. Okay. There we got the B, the side of the B. Basically, where you want to trace what you see here onto the same letters. So on the side of the B, going to just before the bottom there, where the beak stops, where the bottom is, just a little bit of a gap. You have to judge roughly where it should go. So on the side of the B there, and then they'll stop about here. So we'll just do a little line there, and then really we're just going to connect, and then this as well. And now we've got the colors, just between the 3 and the side of a C. I'll just go a bit quicker now, because I'm sure you're getting the point of how this works. Again, that's the top of where the B and the C, the B and the C meet. That's where the opening of the mouth is. There. Like that. And I think it goes in a straight line. It's going to be a bit rough on this. So bottom of the 5, bottom of the 6, here and here, like that. The eye goes between, basically where the bar of the 7 is, the tip of the bar to the junction of the 7. So from here to here, and it's about a circle. Again, the more precise you want to be, the more numbers and letters or whatever doodle you want to do. If it's fairly simple, you don't have to do as many. Okay, then we've got the middle of the bar of the X, and then join everything like that. It cuts the 6. Just looking at the screen back and forth off camera. Then the bar of the X and just a bit of the C there. Like that. Now we've got, just clips the 8 in the middle of the F and the side of the E. So clips the 8, there the F, and then the E. So we can join this. And then so you can see the outside there. It's quite hard to see the black, and that's where I'll use the other picture. So I'm just going to finish the yellow patch there on this belly. So it goes in the junction of the K. You see, like, this is a good marker point where the K meet. The middle of the L, it's not as good because you have to guess. This is pretty much, you know that it's here. Where the L meets, I think it's about here, but you know, this is when, if needed, you can do another grid on top of this. So what you do is you just add letters and numbers to this grid and then take another picture and then add it. But you have to think ahead, it's better. Okay, junction of the K, junction of the M, side of that bar there, which doesn't have to be that accurate, and the side of the B. When you're doing an animal, or feathers or hair, it doesn't matter, but if that was somebody's nose or features, whatever, if you get them wrong, it won't look like the person. So some bits have to be very accurate and some don't have to. Okay, and because it doesn't have to be super accurate, but it is anyway. But now just join, and you see it's better sometimes just have these two clear markers and avoid that one, and then you know it's not straight, it dips a little bit. So I'm not going to do a straight line, I'm just going to do a bit of a dip. And then when I look, this is pretty much where the L should be. So those ones, just only use them if you have to. Use like clear connections, it's better. Okay, that's as far as we can go for that one. Now I'm just going to go with the darker one. Doing this with one hand is not the best. Okay, and now you can see we can't see any of the markings on the yellow bit, but on the black it's very clear. So you want to do as many screenshots as you can before, because if you go back to Snapseed, maybe sometimes things move and it's not accurate. So do more than you think. So really light, way lighter than you think, and way darker than you think. It's easier. Right, bottom part of the connection of the B, kind of the middle of the top of the J, the side of the J, side of the S. So where's the B? B. So we said there, and it meets where the B is. Cool. On the other side, well, let's do the bottom bit. I mean, you get the point anyway, don't have to do full bird, but I'm just gonna finish quickly. There's a middle of that 3, just there, and then on the other side, look at the side of the X, like almost at the end of it. Well, actually, pretty much at the end of the X, and then the middle of the Y. You see, that could. Okay, on the phone, I've got other screenshots where I can't really see the Y here. I would toggle between different intensity of the screenshots, between the darkest and the lightest, because these are two dark areas, but really this screenshot is a little bit too dark. I've only got 2 for the demo, but when I'm painting, I'm literally toggling back and forth just to really see what I'm doing. Okay, so middle of the P, middle of the Y, side of the X, and then for the top, okay, top of the H, and this is pretty much cutting the 8 on the side, like that, side of the H, and then there's a dip, like that, and for the head, it just goes back at top of a 7. When you look back, your Tacon is traced and very accurate. This is the most accurate technique I know, second to obviously using a projector, but the traditional grid is not as accurate, so I find this one is a really, really good one to do. And on the fly, it's very good on the fly. You can literally roll up, the client gives you a picture last minute, you can do doodles, take a picture of your phone or iPad, whatever, and then trace, and then you can crack on. After that, all you have to do is just fill in, and that's it, done. Sweet. Now I'm I'm going to show you how to do a traditional grid. It definitely has its place because sometimes you can't do a doodle grid. If it's too tall, you wouldn't see everything accurately. Also leaves a lot of marks. Sometimes you can't, if you're painting on paper or something or fabric, it's just not an option to do a doodle grid. A lot of the time when I'm painting logos for one of my clients and like live art or whatever, I can't use a doodle grid because we're painting on paper. The paper is probably about actually wider than this wall, probably like from here to here. And the projector doesn't fit because it's too bright. There are people passing by. It doesn't work. It's a hazard. So I've got to use different means. And sometimes a doodle grid is just not an option. So I'm going to show you how to use a traditional grid. It's also good when you're painting on a massive building and you'll have a scaffolding, for example, and then you can't move back and see what you're doing. So a projector's out the way even at night, and a doodle grid would be out the way because the scaffolding's in the way. So it's good to have multiple ways of projecting your work onto the surface. So I'm going to use this picture as an example. You got a nice wall there that I wouldn't mind painting, and I'm going to project the same image as we just did with the doodle grid. So this is the same toucan. And like I said, maybe you're trying to use a projector and that's what you're seeing. It's too faded. It's hard to be accurate. So, it can be good to use a different way. So for that, I'm going to go here to my grid. If I can figure out how to have it downloadable, I'll put it on the course so you guys can just download it at will. Feel free to share it to people, but definitely don't sell it because it's still mine, but feel free to use it however you want. It took me a long time to make because I've made a few before and they were not accurate. And this one I've made like literally as accurate as I could make it. And I think it took a whole day. It might sound silly, but it did. And this was before everybody started using doodle grids. So I kind of had to do that. It's a lot slower to use one of those grids because you have to trace each individual line. So on Photoshop, I'm going to show you how to put it on the toucan, but also when it comes to your wall, you actually have to bring the grid, literally trace all of this onto your physical wall with, the right amount of squares. The good thing about a square is you don't have to measure. So you can see here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares. As long as you have 6 squares on this side with your toucan and then 6 squares here, it doesn't matter if these are like a meter wide and these are 38 centimeters wide. As long as it's the same amount of square, it's fine. It's just you have to go with the amount of squares as opposed to the measurements. The measurements don't matter. Right, so the first thing you want to do is say we don't care about the branch and all we want to do is get from the beak of the toucan to his foot right there. And then the rest we just freestyle it, whatever. And what we're going to do is we're going to limit the amount of lines that we have to do. So if you want to, let me just do a duplicate quickly. T. So if you want it very accurate, then you can just do that and then have 10 lines this way and 10 lines this way, and it's fine. And sometimes you'll find you'll need even more than that, like 20, so you can duplicate this grid onto the right, below and below this way. Most of the time I haven't found that it was really necessary, so that's why I've just made it 10 by 10. It seems to be okay. And for a bird like this, you don't have to be super precise. So I'm going to make it, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7. Let's do that. And so what you want to do as much as possible, you want to use the edges of the grid. So you see the beak, I'm putting the grid there next to the beak, and then also the top of his head. And also here you've got a line there that lines up. If it doesn't, just make it more or less fit this way, because the bottom, whatever, doesn't matter. So you try and use those lines as much as you can. And sometimes you'll even want to do that. So you have the edge of the beak, and then the fluff of the air doesn't matter so much. So you can do it that way. So I'm just gonna delete this, and I'm gonna show you the rest of the grid. So another thing, let me just remove this. So this is the grid 10 by 10. Then we've got the numbers. And what I've also added is grids within a grid. And this is very useful. So as you can see, I'm just going to zoom right into this box here to 1A, the first one. And when you're tracing, so obviously I've got A, B, C, D, and so on, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Because if I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, it'll be confusing. And also I've repeated it here. And I've repeated it here because a lot of the time you go down, you go up, you see, okay, let's say this one is C, right? It's C, and then you go down, and then, you know, you like all the way here, and you're like, oh, which one was it? Was it C, D? And you don't know. So that's why I've added this. It was a lot easier. Honestly, I haven't used this for the past 3 years or so. Doodle Grid has more or less replaced this entirely. But there's some instances where this is going to be the only thing you can use. So it's really useful to know. It's traditional, it's old-fashioned, whatever. The masters used it. You know, it's tried and tested, whatever. So it's good to have one of those. And since as soon as I figure out how to make it downloadable, you can download it and you don't have to make your own. But okay, so the reason for doing grids within a grid is it makes it even more accurate. So going back to our Takan there, say if we put his eye there, you can see now we've got more, in the same way we did the doodle grid, trying to work out where things meet within the square. If I remove this one, then say I want to place the eye, the edge of the eye there, I'm kind of like, well, it's maybe a third of this second thing, and it's a bit vague. So having this other grid, make it a bit brighter. Having this like that helps a lot. So now I can see that it's, you know, this part of the eye is actually a bit more than 1/3, and then it goes to almost this corner here. So it just makes it easier. And the reason I've got these notches is when I'm actually tracing in the street, I will trace this one, I will trace this one, but I'm not going to trace like a million lines because it would be too confusing. I wouldn't know what I'm doing, and it'd also take too long. So I just do that, and then this way I know that I've got it cut in half, and I've got it cut 25%. Just makes it easier this way. So this grid here, I'm going to go back. This grid here I use for Photoshop, but when I'm actually painting, I don't trace that grid. I just need it here to see exactly on the bird where things are connecting. Like see this orange patch here, I can see that it's the 1, 2, 3, so the third, and then from the middle it starts dipping down. It makes it a lot easier than having to guess this way. In this way I know this is the last line roughly, but the rest I'm not too sure. So having this really helps when I'm looking at my phone, but when I'm looking at the wall itself, I'm just looking at something like this because I haven't traced a million lines. And now as far as tracing it, so what we want to do is we want to get the grid and obviously select all 3 layers to have the numbers, the letters, and the 2 types of grid. I'm going to put this here. Let's just say this side of the beak and this side of the beak. And then what I'm going to do is just reduce it. Where we said about 7. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to reduce that so it touches the side of his belly. Gives me one more indication. So it's between this line and this line. I'm going to bring this one up a bit. There you go, to enter. And then from this, I can do a screenshot. On Mac is confusing. Command-Shift-4 to select what you want there. On Windows, it's obviously the Windows symbol and print screen. And then I'm going to use this and put it on top of my building. on my wall. And then just click enter. I'm going to remove this one so it's not confusing, and this one. And now this is what I'm left with. So what I want to do on this wall is trace this line, this line, this line, this one, and then put all the numbers and stuff. I don't want to trace these little lines, just the main one. After that, it's just a case of tracing the same way we did the doodle grid to see that on A, B, C, D, E, F, and then here's 4, so F4. You see the yellow part between the yellow and the black is alongside this line, so you can do a line, and then here it cuts it in the middle between F5, like the center of F5. You can connect, let me zoom in a bit, you can connect this, and then you get to almost half, and then you connect everything this way. The reason it's less accurate is because you have to guess a lot more. Like a doodle grid, you would see that if it crosses the 5, you would know exactly where it crosses the 5. As opposed to here, it's a bit harder. So even though it's got a grid within a grid, you can see the red bit, it's this is the middle of the box, and that's the other line, and you can tell it's kind of in between. It's like, say this would be the middle right here. It's just a bit above, so you would do a red line here. It works, I just don't find it as accurate. But like I said, sometimes it's the only thing that works, so it's a good thing to know how to do them. Last up, we're going to do Stencil. So Stencil is a very accurate way to trace your artwork. If it's outside in the wind, it's not ideal, but whatever. So you got two ways. Like the hair, you can remove a big part, and that's eventually going to be painted. And the other way is to cut on the line. So the best way to do that is, imagine you've got this line here, which is discontinued, and then it starts again. So you have this part, and they're all connected to one another. That avoids, that stops the whole stencil from falling apart, as opposed to have one line here and everything's cut and it's just harder. So what I'm doing now, that's exactly that. Just going along the line, picking which line I want. Obviously, in this case, I'm cutting inside the cleavage, but I know that the line that I want is between the clothes and the skin. You have to make mental markers for that. And the rest, you see, I'm leaving a gap there, and then I'm cutting this line. And the good thing about that is it allows me to paint the side of the garment, but then not everything is going to be cut. So because it's quite a flimsy paper, it's going to stay in one piece. When you're doing letters with loads of cuts, if you don't do that, the whole thing falls apart. And by the time you tape it to the wall, excuse me, when you tape it to the wall, it all falls apart. Basically, you try and pull it in all sorts of directions, and the text is skewed, everything is skewed, so it's not ideal. So a lot of the time, that's what I'll do. Instead of removing big chunks like the hair and the arm, I'll just cut intermittently and keep all the paper basically attached together. That's just a much better way of making sure everything is not going to walk on you. One product you can use is a spray mount, which is basically a glue in a spray can, and it sort of sticks everything a bit better to the wall. I'm going to put it on the glove and hold it, and then just spray as well as I can. And what you want to do is you want to press down, because if I just press like this, if I don't press on the paper and I just apply the paint, the lines aren't going to be very accurate. So you want to press down, and that's why I'm wearing a glove in my left hand instead of the right. Of course, you can wear a glove in both hands, but because in this case, you're using the stencil not as an artwork, but as a way to trace. There we go. This is only to give you a reference for afterwards you can refine it. For example, in the hand, I've just done a big mass, and then I'll be able to cut in after. As I said, for this, I'm only going to do an outline, a silhouette. But if I was to actually paint the hand, by the time I've got all of these reference, I mean, I've got pretty much everything I need. I can guess the rest and just work with it. Okay, I'm just going to take it off. So this is an easy way to trace. So as I said, you can cut a full piece to reveal the shape that you want, or you can just cut the outline, being careful to know which line you're trying to follow. In this case, it's the outline, not the inside line. But obviously, you can make a plan for yourself so you know which line to follow. This is a great way to do it without using a lot of paint and just giving you a map throughout. It didn't take me a long time to trace and cut the stencil or paint it, so that's a pretty good way to do it.